Hey everyone, it's great to talk to you again today after some snowfall this week. Purdue headed up to Michigan to take on the Wolverines in Ann Arbor Thursday night. People keep underestimating Purdue and they just keep winning. In this game, though, it should be a great matchup between Zach Edey, and Hunter Dickinson, who I actually now call the Anvil. Yes, the Anvil tries to bull his way through everybody like steel hitting an anvil. Only problem with that is that he gets away with it. He's already a good player and doesn't need to get the extra help, that's for sure. He's got a good inside game and a good outside game. So let's hope that they call it clean for both sides. As usual, if you've been looking around on the internet, there are many pundits claiming that Purdue shouldn't be number one in the country. They just don't have the star players on the team, they say. Not enough good guys. They have two freshman guards, and you can't win with two freshman guards. Then, in the next breath, they say, well, they do have a potential player of the year on their team, but then more blabbering comes out, and yada, yada, yada. I'm the first to tell you that Purdue is not going to win every game the rest of the season. But many of the blowhards who can't get away from their own team's potential, they continue to try to put down Purdue. It doesn't matter what happens in any situation. They can't be number one for this kind of thing. Those buts always come. The problems of the number one team in the country. Many teams wish they had that. Still, the game looks to be the big men down low, probably playing equally, and I'm guessing neither team is getting way more than the other from those two great players. And I said that in my pregame and now. If you watch my pregame and now, here's a couple questions I also asked. First off, will the freshmen be able to handle the Michigan crowd and the away game? And will the bench show up and get some good minutes and be productive besides the ZD and the Anvils back and forth? My pick was Gillis off the bench to shine in this one. So, let's take a look at what happened as I tell you what I saw as I watched the game. This is kind of what I wrote down as it was going through. Those were my thoughts as the game actually went through. Now, both teams started off with great energy as the game started, and both teams tried to split and spread the floor wide open. Defense was missing in the first 10 minutes of the game as both teams pretty much scored easily and shot well. Michigan, as I predicted, tried to get one-on-one with Edey, who just continued to score at will throughout most of the entire first half. But when the game was still close, I believe Michigan's coach, Juwan Howard, made a mistake in his game plan. As he clearly said in the huddle, don't worry about those other guys. As it appeared, he was starting to worry about Edey scoring so easily. And that was during the TV timeout when they came out. They showed a little bit of the huddle. And you could see he was starting to get worried. Now, as Michigan put more pressure on ZD, Purdue changed up its offense and started shooting from the outside. They were able to drive the lane and made Michigan pay for putting more focus on ZD. So, the Wolverines started the game trying to play one-on-one on ZD, who scored consistently and had no problems getting around the anvil most of the time. Then the Wolverines switched, beginning to double at times, and Purdue switched offensively and continued to score. Meanwhile, Michigan's hot shooting in the beginning, it cooled off quickly with tighter defense being played on them. And that came after some of the timeouts. Purdue started to clamp down harder, and Michigan had problems shooting as easily. Purdue was now on a 15-0 run from about the 8-minute mark to the 3-minute mark of the first half, and that was probably the body blow that helped them get through this. Now, one of the bugaboos of Purdue, though, is not holding on to a lead once they get it, especially against good competition, the last month or so. So I asked myself, will it last? And sure enough, they gave up the last 7 points of the half so that Michigan could close it up to a 6-point game after Purdue had taken a 13-point lead. It was 41-35 at the half. Now, remember the pregame analysis that I talked about the bigs would have a great game down low, but it will be the supporting cast that would make up the difference in this game? You're always looking for people coming off the bench to help, whether it was for Michigan or for Purdue. It was probably going to be a big factor. Now, so far in the first half, that had been all towards Purdue. Now, it'll be interesting to see which team makes good adjustments during the intermission to try to win this one. Those were my thoughts anyway. You also have to give credit to Michigan for only having 2 turnovers at the half. That is awesome. They've been pretty loose with the ball at times this season, and it seemed like they were really tight and good about it in the first half. Plus, free throws have kept them in this game at this point, the Wolverines, that is. And usually that's a plus for Purdue. But at the half, the Wolverines were kind of winning that battle, at least to start. Now, the second half now started like this. Michigan, who had 2 turnovers in the first half, had 2 turnovers on their first 2 possessions in the second half. Meanwhile, Flash, a.k.a. Fletcher Lawyer, nails a wide open three. When I mean wide open, it appeared that he was the only guy in the gym. He was all by himself, literally at the top of the key. Michigan's defense was awful on that play, and the Boilermakers made them pay for it. Immediately, the next possession, ZD scores, and Purdue goes up 46-35. That's early on in the second half. Now, good teams take advantage of those mistakes and situations. Purdue did just that to start the second half on a quick 5-zip run to get scored back up to double digits. So from there, both teams seemed to settle in for a bit shooting-wise, as both were still over 50%, and Purdue had gotten it back up to like 11 points on the lead. But Buffkin was about their only offense for a stretch in the middle of the second half. He drained 9 points in a row on 3 twos and a 3, all beautifully swished from different places on the court, and the first 2 were after like some good solid double picks to get him free. So with 6 minutes left in the game, Purdue is still up by 10 points, but every time they get it to double digits, Michigan brings it back down to 6 or 7, it seems like. Kind of like when you're playing with your little brother and you push him out there and keep him at arm's length. Yes, he's close, but he never really is a threat. That's kind of what it felt like up through that point of the game, at least as we were pushing towards the last few minutes. Now, both teams really tightened down the defense, though, in the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game. A lot of tough possessions for each team and a lot of poor shots because of good defense. Now, Purdue is still up 71-62 with like a minute 22 left in the half. Both big guys are playing great, just as they had throughout the game. Both are scoring and rebounding as normal, although it's a little tighter in the second half. The refs have let the big guys pretty much play. Now, that fits into one guy's game a little better than the others. Hunter Dickinson is a mauler and a basher, where ZD is more of a fluid, flowing player. Now, I watched tape on the Anvil, and he moved on his picks almost every single time, but no calls against him. That didn't change this game. He still was able to do that without any repercussions. Now, those of you at Michigan may not think this, but every time Dickinson moves on a pick to get open, then drains a 3 or someone else does, he's doing an injustice to both teams and how the game's played. And as if on command, he moves setting his pick, and he drains a 3 with 34 seconds left in the game to get it to a 6-point deficit. It was a great shot from about 6 feet behind the line. Truthfully, he should have done more from farther out, I think, in this game. I think he would have scored more and been more effective. But to this point, with just a few seconds left, no one really thought the refs had been part of the game. So it will go down as a non-factor, at least the refs, despite not calling a lot of fouls out there. So for about 20 seconds, Purdue made some pretty big mistakes late in the game. One possession, they did not get a shot off at their end, and ZD basically threw it away. Then after a 3-pointer by the Anvil, that one I talked about, they tossed it to the sideline where no one was paying attention, and Michigan got it and called timeout quickly as the guy was sliding along the floor. A great play for them. Also, the third awful miscue was kind of sandwiched in between all that chaos was ZD missing the front end of a 1-and-1. You can't do that in these tight games. But Fletcher Lawyer, Flash, gutted 2 free throws with 12 seconds left to get Purdue a 6-point lead again, and you thought maybe they were safe. And with 5.5 seconds left, the Anvil hip checks Newman nearly into the cheap seats, and Michigan's Baker somehow miraculously banks in a 3-pointer to make it a 3-point game. Now, Purdue has to be at a baker's dozen for banked-in threes against them this year. At least that's what I was thinking at that point. I can remember back to many. But back to the Anvil. Dickinson pummeling Newman. He never gets called on these, despite doing it 10 times a game. I think maybe Newman, after the game, had to go into concussion protocol after that big-time hit. And there's a lot of people showing videos of it on the internet. You probably can find it. Now, yet, on the inbound, Michigan fouled Brandon Newman, who's a good free throw shooter. He got some revenge as he then made both ends of the one-on-one to go up by 5. Michigan got a pretty good three-pointer off at the end of the game that missed, and Purdue wins the game in Ann Arbor 75-70. Now, this was the Boilermakers' first win at Michigan since 2018, and both teams played with good energy and played hard. It was an enjoyable game to watch, and both teams played really well. Especially if you remember the rock fight in Purdue's game on Sunday. Well, Michigan's game on Sunday was the same thing. So rock fights you thought might be here, but here it was a nice flowing game, most of it, and both teams played really well. So here's the fallout, the now of the game. What can you look for? What happened? What was good? What was bad? Well, there wasn't much bad. But here's the first start. Purdue's guards played great. Flash had 17 and Smitty added 10 to combine for 27 points. They got 4 rebounds and two assists between them. Check. Guards are solid, right? Even though they're freshmen. If you add in Jenkins, he had 8 points. He spelled Smitty off the bench. That's 35 points from your guards. Almost half of the team production. All of us would take that any game and should tell some of those people out there, these freshmen are good ball players. Stop downgrading them. That's my opinion. Now, Purdue made their free throws down the stretch at an 80% clip for the game. They also out-rebounded Michigan by 8. Always a game winner in Purdue's favor. Hard defense, rebounding, they won that again. Now, Purdue shot over 42% from 3. Who says they can't shoot? It looks like the mid-season slump is just slowly starting to fade away the last couple of games. Seems to be getting back to where you would like it, around 40% instead of 30, 32% or even awful a couple games. Now, ZD had 19 points and 9 rebounds and blocked 2 shots, maybe even a third, but it was hard to tell. Some people said he had an off game. Man, maybe we should all have off games like that, right? But other guys came through and played solid games off the bench, as we hoped and thought was needed in the pregame analysis from a couple days ago. And TKR was 4 for 4 from the field and had boatloads of energy, played great defense. He looked like the TKR we always thought he was going to be, and it was just nice to have him see maybe a breakout game. Gillis only had 4 rebounds, but he seemed to be everywhere and knocked down a key three-pointer late in the second half. Jenkins, of course, had 8 points. He knocked down 2 for 2 on his three-pointers and added 2 free throws. So great coming off the bench, and you can probably go check the box for bench play as good in this game too. They looked more like they did earlier in the season, and it was nice to see. Unsung hero, though, Ethan Morton had 5 points, and one of those was a three-pointer early. As usual, he was solid on defense. I think he only took like 3 shots, so he was 2 for 3, and one was a three-pointer. It really was a great team effort with everyone contributing in some way or in some fashion. So, Purdue goes to 20-1 for the first time in school history. They are now 6-0 in road games in the Big Ten this season, and it's now the first 10 games, so they're at the halfway mark. That means they only have 4 left on the road and 6 home games. They are over the hump, so to speak, at least in the road games anyway, and they're right at the top of the mountain, heading down the other side for games in the Big Ten. Now, I love the chatter after the game. Commentators called it a steal for Purdue to win the game at Michigan. No bias in thinking that the number 1 team in the country might win on the road. Plus more blathering about how Purdue doesn't deserve this because they're catching teams at the right time. Meanwhile, discrediting the guys on those teams who stepped up and played well for those competitors. And that happened for Michigan also. They had people step up and they played good. They would ask these commentators, though, they would add this. Yes, you beat who's in front of you, of course, and then the but comes. Remember the big but? There's always a but, isn't there? Here's the but. But Purdue is 20-1. Your team isn't. It was also nice to see from some other fans that they know Dickinson is an anvil and hip checks people and moves on every pick he set, but again, never gets called. I know I wasn't going crazy, and it looked like a lot of other people were upset about it. It was in my pregame and now, and he continued through this game as if nothing ever happened in his life because no one calls it. Okay, here's what Coach Painter had to say after the game. He loved what the guys off the bench gave. He said, TKR and Jenkins gave solid, productive minutes. All of us have to agree with that. It was nice to see them play good. Now, they played pretty good most of the season, but they really was solid this game. Coach said the difference between the Maryland game and this game was Purdue did not turn the ball over like they did against Maryland. They did get over double digits again, but it seemed like the timely ones where it was really bad didn't pop up, except for maybe those last two in the game when it could have hurt them. Now, Ziti said after the game, they had great production from the bench, and he was not surprised by TKR's production because he kind of battles him during practice, and he's a good guy. He knows he can score, and he's great. So he said about Jenkins that people don't realize what a great locker room influence he is, and that he just has a joy about everything. That, my friends, is a selfless player of the year candidate who loves the guys around him and is team-oriented. That's what Purdue has always been. Okay, David Jenkins said that the guys on the bench realize that they have to come in and be ready to go when it's their time. Isn't that great coming off the bench? And he loves how every guy on this team is unselfish and selfless. Give credit to all of our teammates, he said. We're always looking for the open guy and shows how selfless we truly are. So I even peeked in on what Coach Howard had to say about the game. Here's what Coach Howard was talking about. He talked about the Anvil and the ZD battle. And he said, wow, it was like two heavyweights. It was two of the best bigs in the country and two of the best bigs in our conference competing. It was exactly what I expected. Wasn't that nice to hear? It was fun to watch from the sidelines, he said. That's nice to always hear from the other coach. He also said he loved how his guys competed on both sides of the ball. Now, he talked about when his team made mistakes. You know, every coach might get upset about that, but he said, good teams make you pay. And the number one team in the country made us pay for our mistakes. Here's some quick last takeaways and maybe a few numbers for you. 3 Boilermakers were in double digits and 2 more with 8 points. Bodes well for team basketball. It also shows this team is deep. That we knew, of course, all of us knew that, but this game, it was important and it showed. Now, the Anvil won the point battle by 2, a whopping 21-19, and ZD won the rebound game by 2 also. So as expected, they kind of canceled each other out. Let's call it a push, right? Nobody won that battle. It was what we thought was going to happen. But that meant other guys needed to step up, and they did. And on both sides that happened. But it looked like Purdue had the edge for the bench guys. Free throws also get overlooked sometimes, don't they? But Purdue hit at an 80% clip and made more than Michigan even attempted. And that's what they've been doing the entire season, and it helped them and boded well for them in this game. Now, Purdue used good shooting and good three-point shooting at 54% and 42% respectively to help win this one. Isn't it amazing when you hit wide open shots, you tend to hit even more later in the game? Plus, the men brought energy throughout the game. As I said, your stats can be great, but if you don't bring the energy and toughness, you're probably going to lose. So, keep up these deep team habits and things that are in their DNA, and they will go a long way. So, that's it from the old GOAT's desk here at Burden on Society. I'll see you next time. Hopefully we'll have another win, and maybe I'll have some pregame analysis.
Shut up and sit down.